Okay, thanks very much for that, Ali, and a very warm welcome to you all to our fourth information webinar on the preparation of the local economic and community plans. My name is Kathryn Mcguigan. I'm the Principal Officer in the Library Development and Community Policy Unit in the Department of Rural and Community Development. As you can see from the agenda, this webinar is focusing in particular on social, community, health and cultural themes for your local economic and community plans, and we have a very, very interesting panel of speakers arranged for this morning, which we hope will provide you with good guidance, good information, and some ideas as to what might be useful to include in your plans. On the theme of community development, many of you will have attended the event that we hosted on the 4th of May, which was on the theme of a pilot project that we're running with the support of the Dormant Accounts funding on the engagement of marginalised communities in local development processes. And it's very much in the broad area of social inclusion. So just to say that where we're not covering social inclusion per se in this morning's webinar, I think the information that you would have received at that webinar is extremely relevant as part of your thinking and planning around the community elements of your LECP. So just to bear that in mind as well, that's an important element of the plans. I suppose another issue just to bring to your attention as part of the opening is that we've had some queries from people around timeframes and the fact that the work that many of you have been doing, in particular relating to the Ukraine response, has taken you away from the work you had been doing and planning to do on the LECP processes. Our Minister, Heather Humphreys, had a meeting last week with the City and County Management Association. She stressed to them the necessity now to press ahead with the planning of the LECPs, and in particular due to the fact, particularly for this department, there's quite a number of funding programs like LEADER, like SICAP and so on, for which we're coming up towards planning processes for those, and it would be really important that the LECP framework is in place, because those separate strategies and plans need to align with the LECP. So we could find ourselves in a little bit of a bottleneck for both our department, but also other schemes. Like we had a meeting yesterday with some of the local authorities in the border region about peace action plans, which again should align with the LECPs. There's also a new EU Just Transition Fund for the 8 counties that used to have industrial peat harvesting, and again their strategies need to align with the local economic and community plans. So the CCMA representatives did agree with the Minister of the necessity to press ahead with planning and development. And look, we will be in touch with you all to see if there's additional support or information that you need, but we certainly would hope that with the extra resources that have now been provided towards the Ukraine response to each local authority, that work can refocus again on the LECP planning process and make progress on that. The presentations from previous webinars and from today's will be on our department's website. So if you go into the website and you click on the link for community development or community policy, and under that link you click on local authorities, you will see the presentations from the previous events, and we will be putting up the presentations from today's event on that as well. We also have a SharePoint site which currently the chief officers can access. And also we've agreed with the LGMA that we're going to make that available to more staff within the LCDC units or the community and enterprise units, and we'll be in touch with you about that as well, and there will be more information and updates in there for you as well, which is a positive thing. The other issue, I suppose, to flag, and as we're moving along, since the guidelines were published in November, there's been quite a number of new initiatives, new national strategies that have emerged, which I think would be important to have regard to. So, as new initiatives emerge, we will bring them to your attention over the coming weeks and months. Just this week, for example, the Minister for Children has announced there's going to be new local initiatives for addressing child poverty, working with the Children and Young People Services Committees, the CIPCs and the LCDC. So that's something new to bear in mind. It'll be primarily the CIPCs, as they're called, that will be leading on that, but there will be an expectation of a link in, and there will be funding for local initiatives coming through that strategy as well. So it's just something to be aware of in that area of child poverty. Our own department is finalising a new national outdoor recreation strategy. And while it's not approved of yet, I suppose it is envisaging an important role, in particular for the local sports partnerships, and again for the LCDCs in maybe identifying priorities for new outdoor recreation. And I think there will be there's suggestions of some funding as well for local coordination that haven't yet been fully worked through. But again, it's just something that's coming down the tracks. And the expectation would be that priorities for outdoor recreation will be reflected in the LECP as you're planning them forward. So our webinar this morning is scheduled to run for 2.5 hours, which we appreciate is quite long. We are going to take a break halfway through that, which is not on the agenda, but I think we should be able to manage that within the time frame and give people a chance to make a cup of tea or answer that urgent email that's been on their mind while the webinar is running. Just in order to enable us to do that, I just call on all the presenters, just if possible, to stick to the time slots that they've been given, so that we can keep roughly on track. There will be a time for questions at the end. We do have a really good networking session planned as well, where you can share ideas and feedback. And with that, I'll move on then to the first speaker, who is known to many of you, Greg Stratton from the Department of Health. He's high-level responsibility for the implementation of the Healthy Ireland framework, and also has responsibility for the Sláinte Healthy Communities programme and for the Healthy Cities and Counties initiative. So Greg, we're delighted that you've joined us this morning, and you have 20 minutes exactly, and you can unmute there, and off you go, Greg, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks very much, Kieran. I just wanted to just start off by saying thank you very much to yourself and Lisa for the invitation to present to everybody here today on Healthy Ireland and the LECP process. We're really are delighted that we were included in the LECP guidelines, and also have this opportunity to kind of input on the LECP planning process. They really are priorities for us in the Department of Health, and we're very, very happy to support all of the LCDCs in the process of planning the LECPs. So sometimes I get the question, why are the LCDCs and why are the local authorities involved in this work? Why are we doing the HSE's work? And I'm hoping to be able to answer that question. And I'm going to share my screen and my slides, and hopefully it works really, really well. Here's one I created earlier. So maybe I go to the beginning. Now you're going to see all of the stuff.
No problem.
Just going to do this and come up here, maybe there. Does that work?
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks.
All good. Okay. So answering that question, why are we asking local authorities to do what is the work of the health sector? And I'm going to go back to the original Healthy Ireland framework here. And so health is a personal, social, and economic good. And the health and well-being of individuals and of the population as a whole is Ireland's most valuable resource. A healthy population is essential to allow people to live their lives to their full potential, and to create the right environment to sustain jobs, help the economy, and look after the most vulnerable in society. So a healthy population is a major asset for society. And what's required is that all sectors of society and the whole of government need to be proactively involved in improving the health and well-being of the population. When a person experiences health problems, suffers illness, or has a disability, the loss of health and well-being affects not only that person, but all the people around them. And adverse trends in the health of the community and the population impact on the whole of society. And what we have in Ireland is a lot of non-communicable disease. So people with heart disease, cancers that are largely preventable, and actually account for about 55% of all of health expenditure. So that's where we are. And so while I was preparing for this webinar, I was also reminded that we had done an analysis of the LECPs in 2016 that had been developed in the previous round. And without this input, and without having gone near the LCDCs, and what we found was that the majority actually referenced Healthy Ireland within the original LECPs. There was just under half actually referenced quality of life and health and well-being in their overall vision. 29 out of 31 had objectives around healthy childhood. Every single LECP referenced something on healthy aging. 29 out of 31 had a mental health related objective. And then the lifestyle objectives around tobacco, alcohol, physical activity, and healthy eating. A lot of them actually contained a lot of that stuff. So that actually led us to decide to work with the LCDCs, with the Healthy Ireland Fund, and at a national level, because what we wanted to do was to realise the ambitions that were actually held within the original LECPs, and also it enabled us to devolve some of the decision making at national level to local, where a lot of these health related determinants are found. So, you know, we found that the LCDCs were very positive around adopting the Healthy Ireland agenda. Many of yourselves formed Healthy Ireland committees, and really took that on as part of the work and focus of the LCDC. And our focus for the Healthy Ireland Fund has largely been about realizing and operationalizing some of the things held within the original LECPs. So really, as I said, the LECPs for us, it's a really high priority that we work with yourselves to make sure that that's what's held within your LECPs reflect what's in Healthy Ireland, as I'm sure they will. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about Healthy Ireland as well, and this is taken from the Healthy Ireland Strategic Action Plan, and not the original framework. So the vision of Healthy Ireland is where everyone can enjoy physical and mental health and well-being to their full potential, and where well-being is valued and supported at every level of society and is everyone's responsibility. And the 4 goals underneath that are increasing the proportion of people who are healthy at all stages of life, reducing health inequalities, protecting the public from threats to health and well-being, and creating an environment where every individual and sector of society can play their part. And I think that really does provide us the platform for what's happening within the LECP process. One of the new things within the new Healthy Ireland Strategic Action Plan is the new theme on reducing health inequalities. That wasn't there previously for the previous round of the LECPs, and I'll talk a little bit more about the Staunch Care Healthy Communities programme at the end of this presentation. So in preparation for the presentation as well, I looked at our strategic action plan and to see how many of our 61 actions related directly to local government. And I found that 18 of our actions within the Healthy Ireland Strategic Action Plan were actually related to local government, and some of them actually directly related to the LECP process. So the original framework also recognised that local authorities play a crucially important role in protecting and promoting health and well-being at local level, and in particular in areas of disadvantage. In the development of the Healthy Ireland Strategic Action Plan, we had a very high level of involvement of local authorities in the consultation phase, as well as in the validation of the plan itself. And we really do value the role of local authorities in realising the actual Healthy Ireland Strategic Action Plan. So there are things within that around Staunch Care Healthy Homes, embedding ageing in place, engagement with local government to develop governance for Healthy Ireland funded initiatives, working in partnership with local authorities to develop Healthy Cities and Counties network. There's a whole bunch of stuff within that that really we would like to have reflected within the LECPs. So what's important is the determinants of health. And what we find is that the change necessary for substantial improvement in health actually lies outside of the health sector. So when we talk about the determinants of health, we talk about the causes of ill health. So the causes of ill health. And what's really central is the ability to be able to change some of those things. So when we look at the determinants of health, we're looking at things like biodiversity, natural environment, air, water, climate change, streets, parks, roads, all of these things are very, very much outside of the control of the health sector. And they all play a very, very important part in determining health or ill health for people within our society. And that's very much taken from the Ottawa Charter, which was actually developed in 1986. So we've known this for a very long time. And that charter says that health is created and lived by people within the settings of their everyday life, where they learn, work, play, and love. And the healthy settings is very much based on that sentiment. And the settings-based approaches to health promotion involve a holistic and multidisciplinary method, which integrates action across the various risk factors. And that goal is to maximize disease prevention via a whole system approach. So the settings approach has its roots in the WHO Health for All strategy and the Ottawa Charter. And health settings are the key principles include community participation, partnership, empowerment, and equity. And the health settings movement really came out of the WHO strategy for all in 1980. So settings and where people work and live are really important in terms of health creation. I found this really, really good diagram in a Public Health England document, and it really shows how local government can make a difference across the various determinants of health. So it shows the widening circles of influence on people's health. These circles are interpenetrable. For example, your lifestyle choices are influenced, even to a large extent, constrained by the social, economic, and environmental conditions in which you live. The actions of local authorities have an influence, sometimes big, sometimes small, in every one of these circles, and therefore on the health of the people residing in the areas that they're responsible for. The lower half of the diagram shows only some of the local government activities that impact on the social determinants of health, and in each one of the circles of influence. So some services, such as the planning function, have an influence in more than one circle. In this case, it could impact on biodiversity or the livability of the environment and opportunities for physical activity and recreation. So you can see within that that health, when we look at health, we often look at it from a very, very specific lens, like an HSE or a Department of Health type lens, in terms of thinking about health as the kind of the lifestyle factors. So the things around physical activity, smoking, all that kind of stuff. But actually, so the things that are driving that are the determinants, and local authorities have a really key role to play in shifting that. So what we're trying to do at the moment with Healthy Ireland is to shift away from just focusing on health behaviours and actually trying to get at how can we ensure that our local authority partners and our partners across government are looking at more of these things, more of the play spaces, street lighting, biodiversity, home insulation, all of these things that really could have huge impacts on people's health and well-being. And I found another really good illustration, and this one was actually taken from a local development plan for Northampton in the UK, developed in 2018. And what they've done here is they've placed people really at the centre of how they're planning and how they're looking at their local services, and clustering the various interventions that they can make around those particular people. So, libraries, leisure centres in terms of lifestyle, in terms of communities, social cohesion, the area committees, maybe we can talk about PPNs, youth groups, community development, the local economy. One of the things that I find interesting about LECP is this division between economic and community, and actually they're symbiotic. And if you have a good job, if you're employed, if you're educated, those are things those are factors that can have a huge impact on your health and well-being. Having a job can extend your life by 10 years, for instance. So placing people really at the center of planning, and I'm really minded as well that I think it was putting people first is very much the genesis of the LCDCs and the LECP process. So really trying to get people within the center of planning for health and well-being for us is really important. So what is the local government role within Healthy Ireland, or within this health and well-being kind of structure? So the roles that local government undertake to improve health through tackling the social determinants include things like civic leadership. Local authorities are employers and anchor institutions, and I'll go into that a little bit more. They secure services, they do planning and licensing, as well as being champions for prevention. And what we've found over the years is how well the LECPs or the LCDCs have become champions for prevention through the Healthy Ireland framework. So the fundamental importance of the role of councils remains, above all, as lead organisations for local communities and leaders for tackling the wider determinants of health. Councils are place shapers and place leaders, and health improvement is generated with civic leadership in local government, relate to the factors of ill health. So councils take the lead in local development and partnership, the building up of assets of communities. And they encompass building up communities through support for local voluntary sectors and leadership as well. Local councils could be considered as well anchor institutions within their communities, and anchor institutions are large organizations that are unlikely to relocate and have a significant stake in their local area. Local authorities have sizable assets that can be used to support a local community's health and well-being, tackle health and tackle health inequalities. So how local authorities procure, how they train, employ, how they do professional development, the buildings and the land use of local authorities can have a major impact on health and well-being. And anchor institutions can have a positive impact on local communities in two ways, through the local economy and through the environment. And both have the potential to improve the health of individuals and communities. Local government is also responsible for commissioning or providing important services that contribute to improving and safeguarding people's health. And the knowledge and skills of local authority staff can be crucial in coordinating work across departments and in supporting communities to improve their health and well-being. And also in terms of planning and regulating the built environment, this can have a major influence on people's health. The quality of housing and infrastructure, access to jobs and services are vital determinants of health. The promotion of active travel has benefits throughout life, from active school travel plans through cycling to work to active and healthier older age. Homelessness has a huge effect on health, as does the ability to have a warm home. Promoting green space in the natural environment is beneficial for both physical health or physical activity and mental health. And access to health services and health promoting activity is really important, as is the freedom to avoid unhealthy influences. So one of the other things I would like for you to focus on in the LECP planning process is data and information, and really looking at prioritizing in terms of health and well-being. So what I have up there is the Healthy Ireland Outcomes Framework, which has quite a number of different factors for health and well-being, and should give you a good sense of the kind of outcomes that we're looking at from the Healthy Ireland perspective. So what we tend to focus on is in the upper right-hand side of that Healthy Ireland Outcomes Framework, the lifestyle and behaviour risks. So looking at things like physical activity, smoking levels, use of alcohol, breastfeeding rates, and those kinds of things, because they're very much the easy dial to move. But some of the things down at the bottom are maybe where local authorities have more influence in terms of the environmental factors and socioeconomic factors that are at play in terms of determining health and well-being. And we'd very much like to see that movement downwards on the Healthy Ireland Outcomes Framework within this LECP planning process and this particular round of the LECPs. And also in terms of those well-being factors and some of the mortality and morbidity outcomes as well. But we really do recognize that that we can't do it all, and that perhaps what we really need to do within each of our areas is to look at how do we prioritize, how do we find which of the outcomes we need to have more of an influence on. So is air quality, water quality a particular issue for your local authority? Because those are things that can have really significant impacts on health. I think it's estimated that 3,000 people a year die related to poor air quality in Ireland. So things like burning solid fuels can have a significant impact on people's health and well-being, as an example, and could be something that could be focused on in particular local authorities. I think we have some of the highest rates of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, in Europe, and really we need to do something about how do we influence that within what we're looking to do.
Hey, Greg, sorry to interrupt there. Yeah, your 20 minutes is up, so if you can wind it up in terms
I'm going
of
to wind it up as quickly as I can.
Any key messages that you might have just at the end. Thanks, Greg.
So we have the Health Atlas, and we're looking to try and make that available to our Healthy Ireland coordinators. It's available at the minute to our Healthy Community Programme local development officers. I just wanted to mention that there is a shift in national government towards the development of a wellbeing framework. So there is a policy shift at national level to look at wellbeing, not just GDP, as a measure of success. So being mindful of that. Just to be aware of the Healthy Communities Programme. What I'm going to say about that is that we have our Healthy County and we have our Healthy Communities. They're both, again, they're very symbiotic. They should be working together. It's proportionate universalism in action. And so that's about trying to make sure that communities that could be left behind. So sometimes if we do health and well-being at a population level, what we can do is actually widen health inequality. So what you need is targeted measures towards specific communities. And 14 local authorities will have one of the 19 areas, and really that needs to be reflected in the LECP. I'm going really fast. And then in terms of, that's where the healthy communities are. And in terms of the Healthy Ireland Fund, again, we're looking for targeted approach, looking at prioritization, looking at focusing on the outcomes that I've just shown in the Healthy Ireland Outcomes Framework. That round 4 of the fund is going to be much more outcomes focused rather than those lifestyle factors that we've put in funding for a Healthy County Coordinator in all 31 local authorities, really to be able to drive this agenda within the local authority, and that the LCDCs will be maintained as a very key partner in the decision-making process for the Healthy Ireland Fund. And in terms of healthy cities and counties, I know that Tony and Denise are going to cover a lot of that stuff, so I probably won't go there too much. And just to say thank you very much, and please do get in contact with me if there's anything that we can do to support you in the process of developing the LECPs. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Greg. And just like to compliment you on, I think you were very clear in linking the work that you're doing on the overall strategy with the work that's being done at local authority level and how that could be included in the local economic and community plan. So thanks very much for that. And I think there's very useful information there on the presentation that the participants can avail of after the event. So thanks very much again. So as you say, we're moving on then to look at from a local authority perspective, and we have from Cork City Council, Denise Cahill, who's the Healthy Cities Coordinator for the City Council, and Denise is also an adjunct lecturer in public health in UCC, and she's also joined by our colleague Tony Fitzgerald from Cork City Council. So over to you, Denise and Tony. And again, you have 20 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll just keep an eye on my watch here. I'll be really quick. Thank you very much for the invitation to present here this morning. I'm just going to very quickly take you through the delivery of healthy cities and counties at local level from a practice perspective, and then I'm going to hand over to Tony, who'll talk about the political perspective. So my contact details are there if anybody wants to get in touch, and I'm happy to share my slides at the end as well. So Cork has been a WHO healthy city since 2012. So that predated Healthy Ireland and LECPs. So we're up and running now at this stage. We have designation 10 years we're celebrating this year. In terms of what a WHO or World Health Organization healthy city is, it's really about signing up to a commitment to putting health on the social and political agenda. So it's not that your designation means your job is done. It actually means that your job is started, that you're committing to a process of engaging around health at city level in terms of your planning, your structures and your environment. So it's a commitment to health and the process and structure to achieve it. Greg talked a lot there in terms of the social determinants of health, and this is, I suppose, the essence of the work that we're doing in healthy cities. You know, you might ask the question, why would the LCDC or the LECP even think about health? And the reality is that, you know, the health services is dealing with the fallout of poor health, and that the rest of us, I suppose, in our day-to-day lives and in our working objectives, a lot of what we're doing impacts on health, and we can impact on it in a positive way. This, I suppose, is a stream that I use to demonstrate where we work. So if you think about the health services really are dealing with the fallout of ill health. So they're working downstream, they're pulling people, I suppose, if you want to just use the analogy of pulling people out of the stream that are drowning, and they're resuscitating them and they're treating them. Whereas local authorities are working along the stream and upstream, looking at, you know, what's in place to keep people safe, what's in place to keep people healthy, how can the environment be conducive to health. And a lot of the decisions that are made at local authority level, you know, have the biggest impact in terms of our health in communities across the country. So in terms of healthy cities, you know, if there are people that are struggling and health is a big factor, you might look at what's happening upstream, what's going on that's causing people to become unwell, or to, in the analogy of the drowning person, what's causing them to drown in the first place. And you might be looking at, you know, there might be an issue with the bridge, people are falling in. How do you actually prevent that from happening? How do you work at a level that promotes people's well-being? And that's what healthy cities and counties is all about, working upstream to prevent the problems happening in the first place. So these are our partners in Cork. There's a whole range of partners which are very much in line with the partners that can be on the LCDC as well. These are a range of organisations across the city, and our job really is about finding that common language for promoting health in Cork. The LECP in Cork is called Pure Cork, an action plan for the city, and Theme 2 of our LECP commits to Cork as a healthy city, as a WHO city. And it's about ensuring Cork is a healthy city that connects to improve the health and well-being of all its people. Excuse me. So as Greg said, we look at data and we carry out a profile every 4 years in line with the census. These are the patterns of inequality that have emerged from our previous census in Cork. And you will see here that there are patterns and geographical, I suppose, demonstrations of inequality in terms of employment, in terms of education, and in terms of self-rated health from the census. Healthy Ireland Fund has helped us in Cork Healthy Cities to deliver on a number of actions, and through the LCDC we deliver these actions. And I'm just going to give you a very quick whistle-stop tour some of those actions. One of the programs that we deliver on the ground in Cork City is called Green Spaces for Health. And this is an initiative that's funded by the Healthy Ireland Fund through the LCDC to deliver greening programs across the city. We see that the provision of green spaces allows people the opportunity to interact and learn about food, locally grown food, healthy food, and also interact in a social way. Another programme is the Let's Play Cork initiative, funded by the Healthy Ireland Fund through the LCDC to provide a play coordinator for the city. This has been a massive success in Cork. It has led to multiple projects. We've been able to engage in a European URBACT project. We have managed to pedestrianise a space in the city, and it has led to a number of pop-up play events throughout the city. Excuse me. We also have funded the Cork Food Policy Council, which is about the development of a sustainable and healthy food system for the city and county. What we do with this initiative is that we support workplaces, educational institutions, and community organisations to provide a sustainable and healthy food system. We have a food harvest festival, we have sustainable and healthy food awards, we carry out submissions on agricultural policy, and we connect health and environment. And finally, we have the Transport and Mobility Forum, which is about promoting active transport in the city. And the TMF has been funded by the Healthy Ireland Fund through the LCDC. This is an example of a parklet that was developed back in 2018, pre-pandemic, to demonstrate an alternative use of a car space and to promote active travel and transport. So the concept of a holistic approach to achieving a healthy city is being embraced in Cork City. And in January 2012, the city was designated as a healthy city by the WHO. The Healthy Cities model provides the framework to develop innovative and creative solutions to public health and health promotion for the city. And the LECP and the LCDC supports this. I'm now going to hand over to Tony, before I run out of breath, to talk about the political structure.
Thank you, Denise. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Tony. Yeah.
Oh, good. If you move to the next slide, so Denise, and thank you for your presentation. So
just to say, we've lost the slides for a moment. Sorry, Tony, just to say so. Okay. Denise, if you want to bring the slides up for Tony.
I was just going to say that so committed is Denise to her role that she's recovering from COVID, and she still came along this morning. So thanks, Denise, for that. My name is Councillor Tony Fitzgerald, a member of Cork City Council. My background is in community health here in my local community in Knocknaheeny on the north side of Cork City. And I was involved in setting up and promoting the niche project, Northside Community Health Initiative, which you may know of. I was elected to Cork City Council in 2014, and I was Lord Mayor of Cork from 2017 to 2018. And I used that as a platform to promote healthy cities and counties with a variety of number of events during my term as Lord Mayor of Cork. Next slide. I'm also part of the political vision group of the WHO, appointed by the WHO recently, which is a combination of a number of political representatives across the network. And our role and our job is to develop a draft political vision for the next phase, for the current phase phase 7 of the WHO designations. Next slide, Denise. Yeah, we have met at various locations and has some virtual meetings because of COVID. And I suppose COVID, like everybody else, like every other group, it has kind of stalled some of the process in terms of trying to move the political agenda at European level, but we're committed to ensuring that the objective is achieved. Next slide, Denise. So the new phase of Healthy Cities is to building a healthy, equitable and sustainable future for everyone. Healthy cities are places of community prosperity where inclusive, accountable and participatory governance processes are undertaken in pursuit of health, well-being and the common good. They lead by example locally and globally, interacting with the planet and other actors to create physical, social and cultural environments that are designed to empower and enable all people equitably, allowing them to reach their full human potential. Now that's a very broad statement, but if you take out the key words there of places, prosperity, participatory, planet, people, you'll see that there are the 6 Ps, which are focused on from the Copenhagen Mayor's Agreement in 2018. And these are our priorities in terms of moving forward. And I'm sure you've seen the next slide, Denise, up there, how we implement the plan in terms of focusing at the heart, as Greg has said earlier on, health and well-being at the heart of everything that we do in terms of equity and governance, and moving it through sustainable development, urban development, social development, human development, and economic governance. So these are the 6 Ps which are really important, and these are the principles that we place the work of the program, both locally, nationally, and internationally. Next slide, Denise. Next one again, please. Just move on to the next. Thanks. So, so where does the political agenda come from, and how is it interacted? How is it developed locally and nationally and internationally? At one of the business conferences, there was a call came out for each of the cities and each of the countries to drive healthy cities and counties at political level, locally and local authorities. And I was present at that meeting and brought the call back to my own council in Cork City Council to drive the political agenda. So this is a strategy that we developed in Cork City Council that may be a model of best practice for other local authorities in Ireland. Again, with COVID, I didn't have the opportunity to go and meet all the local authorities, but it is something that I have that I intend to do over the next couple of months, and I've already made contact with various mayors and political reps across the political parties. I'm just conscious as well that every June a new mayor or Lord Mayor comes into office, and that is probably one of the challenges we have, because we need continuity within each of the local authorities. So in Cork City Council, after the local elections in 2019, the political parties agreed to appoint a political rep to Cork City Council. And that political rep term lasts for 5 years, the life of the council. The role of that political rep is to attend the Cork City Cork Healthy Cities Committee, and gives a commitment to be a voice of council and drive the Healthy Cities agenda. One of the key objectives would be to support the action plan and bring that plan to council and inform and debate the plan among the political parties. Next slide, please. So in each local authority, you have the corporate policy group, which is made up of the chairs of each SPC, strategic policy committee, and members of the executive. So our action plan and our reports were brought to the corporate policy group, who meet on a regular basis. And it was then brought to each strategic policy group. And the uniqueness of this, of course, is that in the strategic policy groups, you also have the external partners engaged in the process in each strategic policy committee. So they'd include people from the business, people from trade, people from hospitality. So you get a very good overview of you can give a very good overview to a wide cohort, not only of political but external partners that contribute to the life of the city. And each of the committees, there's planning, roads, finance, housing, environment, and economic development. Next slide, Denise, please. So then the council, first of all, accepted the action plan and agreed to send to each of the strategic policy committee. So myself and Denise traveled that journey and made presentations to each of the SPCs. And to be fair, I think we got a very good hearing, and we reached our objective by putting into the minds of politicians that any policy decision that they make has health and well-being at the core of what they're doing. So once we had completed the delivery of the plan and the meeting and the presentations to each of the healthy cities, or to each of the SPCs, the report returns to council and was approved and adopted by council. So it started at the CPG, went to each of the SPCs, and then returned to council. So by the end of this process, all 31 members of council across all the political divides were well informed and were well briefed on what Healthy Cities is about. And heretofore, that was not the case. So one of the major positive outcomes was that health is firmly central in the preparation of the city development plan. And we are approving that in the next 2 weeks in Cork City Council, and that will be crucial in terms of how the city development plan is developed. So each political rep and external partner is aware to include health and well-being in any future decision making. The strategy is applauded nationally and across the WHO European network, and the phase 7 approval, which Cork City Council achieved, got a strongly highly recommendation from the WHO in terms of the council's role in the political input. So finally, the last slide, declares that together as Healthy Cities, we commit to act collectively with other cities in the WHO European region and globally through a focus on people, places, participation, prosperity, peace, and the planet for the pursuit of improved health and well-being, and to meet the urgent and transformative demands of the United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And that goes back to the 6 Ps, which were agreed again by at the Mayor's Copenhagen Agreement in 2018. So the call really is to engage with the local politicians in each of the local authorities to ensure that everything that is delivered through the SPCs and through their work is achievable with health and well-being at their agenda, as the clock ticks, and we're now into year 4 of the council's term of office. The objective would be that by the next local elections, that we would be able to inform every local authority to appoint a political representative to their local Healthy Cities Committee or Healthy Counties Committee, and to drive the political agenda that we achieve, that is being pursued under the WHO European political network. We cannot afford to fail. It's a very achievable objective with commitment and dedication, and we're very proud of what we do here in Cork, and we applaud all of the other healthy cities and counties. We're very proud to be part of this network, both nationally and internationally with the WHO. That's a really quick whistle-stop tour of our presentations, and thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Agus Gurmat, good Latvain, Tony, thanks very much and much appreciated your input from the point of view of the elected representatives and local authorities. That's been extremely useful. And also thanks again to Denise for her contribution on the work being done on behalf of Cork City Council. So just quickly before we move on to the next presentation, just there's 2 questions there on the chat function, and I know Ali advise you that you can use that if you wish to make comments or ask questions. So one is in relation to the schedule of schemes. Our department did prepare a schedule earlier this year, and we can certainly follow up to see if that has been updated. It was largely led by the rural development side of the department, more so than our side, but we'll certainly follow up on that and make it available to all of the chief officers for their information. And then Greg, there's a question for you there. I'm not sure if you've seen it on chat in relation to the appointment of Slán to Care community workers. Maybe can you just give a comment on that as to the next phase of that for local authorities that are not currently included?
I think this relates really to a second phase for the Slán to Care Healthy Communities program, and I think we've selected 19 sites for phase 1, and we're really only beginning with operationalizing that in 2022. I think it's going to be time, it's going to take time for us to establish an evidence base of its effectiveness. So I don't think it's going to be something. I think the LECP planning process is for 2 years, and I don't think it'll be within the time frame of that we'll have a second phase. It'll probably be in subsequent phases of the LECP process that we'll probably be able to include other areas into that program. Just being really honest about it.
Okay, no, that's fine, Greg. And I suppose people will be aware as well that for this new iteration of the LECPs, we're dealing with 2-year implementation plan framework. So it may be something for the 19 areas currently approved that would be included, and maybe for others it's something to consider for further iterations in terms of the implementation plans. Okay, that's great. Thanks very much for that, Greg. Okay, we move on then to the next presentation from Bernie Bradley from the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission, and she's a member of the Public Sector Duty team. So as per the guidelines that were issued for the LECP development, the question of public sector duty is an important one from the point of view addressing this particular needs of particular communities protected under the Equality Act. So we're delighted that Bernie's joining us. So over to you, Bernie, and thank you again.
Thanks, Kieran, and good morning. It's a pleasure to be here to speak to you all on the public sector duty and how it relates to your work in developing the local economic and community plans. A little bit like Joni Mitchell here, having worked in local authorities for almost 20 years and was involved in the preparation and the development of Monaghan's last LECP. So I've looked at love from both sides now, as they say. And it's nice to see so many familiar faces on the screen. So I have a presentation that we can, do you want me to, you have it there, Ali? Yeah, and I can move it on.
Oh, so Bernie, we were thinking with slides you were going to do it, and then
okay, no, it's fine, I can do it. Just give me a minute. Let me see. Sorry. My computer is freezing for some reason.
And I can certainly bring it up if that doesn't work.
Yeah, it's freezing on me for some reason.
Okay, so let me do that now.
Ali, I'm just wondering if there's a technical issue there, we might just take a break now. Would that be a good idea?
No, I think no, we're ready to go. It's just we've got Bernie's got the slides, and there's another piece of work we're going to share, aren't we, Bernie? Okay. So we're all prepared. So I think let's keep going, and just to say yes, as you'd said, Kieran, we'll have our break after this. So Bernie, I'm all set. I can share the slides if you like.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Thanks, Ali. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So just move it on to the next one. So as as many of you probably know, the public sector equality and human rights duty has been a statutory obligation since 2014, and it's found in section 42 of the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission Act. And it's a positive duty that calls on public bodies to be proactive in their consideration of equality and human rights in the day-to-day work of their organisation, and essentially looking at putting equality and human rights in the mainstream of how public bodies execute their functions. So specifically, we can move on there. What is the public sector equality and human rights duty? So as I said, it's found in section 42 of the Human Rights and Equality Commission Act. The legislation specifically says that a public body shall, in the performance of its functions, have regard to the need to eliminate discrimination, promote equality of opportunity and treatment of its staff and the persons of whom it provides services to, and protect the human rights of its members, staff and persons to whom it provides services to. For the purpose of giving effect to the subsection 1, the public body shall have regard to the functions of its purpose and its size and resources set out in a manner that is accessible to the public in its strategic plan, an assessment of the human rights and equality duties it believes relevant to its functions and purpose, put in place actions and proposals to address the issues that they identify in an assessment, and report in an accessible manner their progress on the developments of these achievements in their annual report. So we can move on, Ali. So essentially, the public duty places a statutory obligation on public bodies in the performance of their functions to have regard to the need to eliminate discrimination, promote equality of opportunity, and protect the human rights of those to whom they provide services and their staff when carrying out their daily work. So essentially what that means in the context of the LECP, giving effect to, essentially in legal speak, is putting it into practice. So putting the duty into practice for the public body who, in this instance, oversees the development and implementation of the LECP, which is the local authority. In the most recent corporate plan guidelines, the public duty is referenced, and I'm hoping that all strategic plans of the local authority have the public sector duty embedded in it. So as a function of the local authority, the development and implementation of the LECP falls under the having regard to. So the assess, address, report falls to the role of the local authority in its corporate plan. And then within the development of the LECP as a function of local authorities, it must then have regard, and essentially in legal speak, to have regard to eliminating discrimination, promoting equality and protecting human rights means you genuinely give it proper attention and focus. So essentially, you can move on, Ali, to the next one. In the preparation of the local economic and community plan, as a function of the local authority, it is subject to the public sector duty obligations, and local authorities, as the overall responsibility for developing and implementing the LECP, must ensure that equality and human rights obligations that are equivalent to the public sector duty are included in the local economic and community plans. This includes both elements of the plan, both the economic and the community elements of the LECP. So you can move on, Ali, sorry. So what this means then, in your work in preparing your LECP and the implementation of your LECP, you must have regards, you must give proper focus and attention to the elimination of discrimination, promotion of equality and protection of human rights of the community to which the LECP aims to support. This includes people covered under the 9 grounds of the equality legislation. Intersectionality, it's important to recognise in the development of your plans that people experience discrimination on more than one ground. So you have to take into consideration, people with a disability who may also be from the traveller community, or women who are from a migrant background. So intersectionality is really important. And the human rights that pertain to the purpose and the function of the public bodies involved in the LECP. And that will be relevant to all of the agencies sitting around the table and all of the actions and high-level goals that you agree to implement in your LECP. You can move on then, Ali. So what it means really in your consideration, how do you actually do that? How do you give regard to the public sector duty when you're planning it? It includes then in the development of the LECP, your high level goals and the supporting actions, that you consider the needs and potential barriers that are experienced by people who are protected under the 9 grounds of the equality legislation. And you ensure in your preparation and in your implementation that any potential barriers are considered, accommodated and removed, and that the agreement and the development of your high level goals and your priority actions across both elements of the plan. And recognizing that multiple forms of discrimination do occur, and that human rights that are relevant to the actions and the high level goals are protected. The starting process for this is a commitment by all players who are involved in the decision-making process and signing off of the LECP. So that includes the local authority members who are on the Strategic Policy Committee, the senior management team, the members of the local Community Development Committee, and the Advisory Steering Committee that is recommended within the guidelines in the establishment of this. In the embedding of that then, how would you go about doing that? You must ensure from the start that all the players involved in the development of the plan have a shared understanding of human rights and equality. For this purpose, and I will go into it later on, we would recommend at least the advisory committee taking our new e-learning course, which is an introductory module on human rights and equality, and I think I will explain that a little bit further. Ensure that the duty is considered across all elements of the LECP. So the public sector duty does not just relate to the community element of the LECP. It's not limited to standalone actions that address and focus on equality and human rights. It must be considered right across all of the high level goals and supporting actions. And you must demonstrate how you have had regard. What have you done to ensure you have eliminated discrimination, promoted equality and protect human rights? You can't just make a statement to say that you've done it. You must demonstrate in the process that you have done it. And you do this in a number of ways. Firstly, you obviously build a shared understanding of equality and human rights. You ensure that any consultation that you engage with, whether with your stakeholders or with the wider community, is inclusive and provides opportunity for all members of the community to engage and have their views. You can move on, Ali. In addition, just the cross-cutting priorities that are set out in the guidelines, the public sector duty is a good framework that will support the achievement of many of these cross-cutting priorities: equality, poverty, rurality, age and disability. So it doesn't have to be a separate process for each priority. The framework of the public sector duty will capture that. Move on, Ali. So in relation to the embedding of the duty in the development and the implementation of the plan, you must look at an evidence-based approach. So an evidence-based approach is essentially that you're making decisions on how to address issues and barriers or situations within your community that is going to be addressed within the LECP, and it's based on information that you've gathered that is relevant to your local community. And that can be done in a number of ways. It can be done through not just singular, but collectively, an inclusive consultation with stakeholders and the wider community, your socioeconomic analysis, reports and research from other agencies like the SRI, or indeed the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission, or your local civil society organisations' reports and submissions. The benefit of the LECP being delivered in collaboration with the LCDC is that as the body overriding the development of this, if you ask the questions, there are people around the table who have the answers. So you don't need to know what the barriers are, what the challenges are, because the people who sit around the LCDC and the supporting bodies involved in that will give you the answers for that. You can move on. So in demonstrating how you have had regard, or how you've really given it a focus to eliminate discrimination, promote equality of opportunity and protect the human rights. In considering, you can move on to the next one there, Ali. In considering, let's say, your high level goals, you must identify the human rights and equality issues that is relevant to each goal. clearly define the issue, to help identify a proper solution. If you clearly identify what might be the human rights and equality issues relevant to that goal, will help you identify what you need to do it. So for example, just give you an example, if your high level goal is around to develop an economic infrastructure that is attractive to employers, employees and entrepreneurs, looking at this from an equality and human rights perspective, this must also include, a focus on employees with a disability, employees from a migrant background, women. Your supporting action might be to develop a skills apprenticeship program that are relevant to the needs of the local employers and the local support local people to uptake. If you view this through an equality and human rights lens, how would that high level goal and supporting action differ? What would you need to do within those goals and within that action to make sure that you have been compliant with public sector duty? And that's essentially what it is. It's looking at what you're planning to do through the lens of human rights and equality. And again, consultation will drive this. So you can move that on, Ali, to the next one. Yeah. So a key focus of the development of an LECP, and I say this from the experience of being involved in developing an LECP at local level, is inclusive consultation. And an inclusive consultation process ensures that the barriers that often prevent someone from participating in a consultation are removed and a variety of opportunities to engage are provided. So often when people don't engage in a consultation, it's assumed that people don't have an interest and they have nothing to contribute. Often people either don't know a consultation is happening, or the opportunity for them to have their voice heard or have their views heard is not provided. So what that means, you can move on, Ali. Suggestion would be to develop a very clear consultation plan. Why are you undertaking a consultation? What do you want to know? What is it that people can actually contribute to? It's okay to set out the boundaries within the scope of the LECP. Make it clear to people, this is what we want your views on. This is what we want you to input. A clear timeline. This is when it will start. This is when it will end. A feedback process. What will happen to the information people provide you? Will they get feedback? Advertise in a variety of ways, not just one avenue, whether it's social media or local media. Try to capture the wider audience by a variety of advertising. Make sure the information that you provide around the consultation is accessible, it's easy to read, it's easy to understand, so that people know what they're getting involved in and what they're contributing to, and providing a variety of opportunities for people to engage. You can move on, Ali. And this specifically looks at opportunities for people who are not able to attend a public meeting, whether that's somebody who's a carer, somebody who has no transport. So if you're having a public meeting, you have to consider there's people who won't be able to get to a public meeting and do have views to say. Provide opportunities for people with limited literacy or English language skills. Providing opportunities for people who don't have access to the internet or don't have the skills to use SurveyMonkey. Providing opportunities for people with sensory impairments who use alternative communication methods. Ensure that your public meetings are held in accessible buildings and easy to link into local transport services, and ensure that the information relating to the consultation is accessible so people actually understand what it's all about, and that way you will get the feedback that will inform and direct the LECP process. So just some of the key messages. This is a statutory obligation. This is not something that is nice to do. It is a statutory obligation since November 2014. It does require buy-in and commitment from the top, leadership and strategy from the senior players, the people who are making decisions around the LECP. Aligning it with your strategic planning process. So we're going to assume that your strategic corporate plan has the public sector duty embedded in it. But this is about putting the human rights values and equality at the heart of what you're doing, the heart of what you're developing. It applies right across the functions. It applies to your economic elements, to your community elements, and to all of the supporting actions that lie within that. And it basically translates into when you go to deliver your actions on the ground, there is a culture and respect for equality and human rights in your delivery. must be an evidence-based approach. Gather your evidence from data, listening to and understanding the needs of the community to which you are providing a local economic and community plan. Using your structure, particularly the advisory steering committee and the LCDC, to drive the duty and the requirements of the duty, and build on structures, initiatives already in place. There are plenty of strategies, programs and activities happening within the local community that are already tackling and addressing equality and human rights. Build on those structures, use those structures to implement human rights and equality focused work within your LECP, and use it as a framework for progressing the other elements that are in your plan, like the Healthy Ireland that was referenced, and the other pieces of that. So just to stop, you can move on there, Ali. So some of the considerations for LCDCs and local authorities in moving on to the development of LECP: training and awareness raising. So as I said earlier, having a shared understanding of human rights and equality is really important to ensure it flows down through the development and implementation of the LECP. We would recommend the introductory model on human rights and equality, particularly for the advisory steering committee, but anybody who would, we're promoting it right across the public service. I have a little animation on the training that will give you an idea of what's available within it, but it would set the context for your decision making and the people involved in making decisions, that everybody's coming at it from the same approach. Consider your consultation has equal opportunity for people to take part. Make sure not everybody wants to be part of a consultation, but the reason why they don't engage shouldn't be because they couldn't. You can move on then. Having regard to the equality and human rights issues relevant to the high level goals that you agree, and it's supported by the data and the evidence that you gather in your consultation and other analysis. Similarly, so to the priority actions supporting each of the high level goals, ensure that you've considered equality and human rights issues. You don't need to know the answers. There's plenty of people in the community and around the LCD tables and around other tables that have the answers once you ask the questions. You can move on now, Abby. I'm going to show you, so this is the part of the Commission's role in the implementation of the public sector duties, to provide guidance and support to public bodies to help them meet their obligations under the duty. And we have identified that building the skills and competencies of people working in the public service is critical to the implementation of the duty. So we recently developed and launched an e-learning tool on equality and human rights in the public service. This is a free e-learning tool. It's self-paced and it's available to all members, anybody working in the public service. And we've recently opened it up to civil society organizations as well. So that would include members of your PPN and other reps on the LCDC. It will support you to have an understanding of what a human rights and equality looks like in public service. So if I'm going to play the little animation, it'll give you an idea of what's contained, but we would certainly recommend that to get a good shared understanding that this is a good starting point for people involved in the process.
Welcome to this introductory e-learning module, Equality and Human Rights in the Public Service. This module was developed by the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission, Ireland's national human rights institution and Ireland's national equality body, and is available to staff of public bodies. The protection and promotion of equality and human rights is core to the work of public servants. Since 2014, there is a statutory obligation on public bodies to have regard to the need to eliminate discrimination, promote equality of opportunity, and protect the human rights of service users and staff in their daily work. This is called the Public Sector Equality and Human Rights Duty. This e-learning will support you as a public servant to build understanding of this statutory obligation in your daily work. It will also support a shared understanding of equality and human rights in the public service, supporting better quality of services and better work environment. This module will introduce you to Equality, Unit 1, Human Rights, Unit 2, and the Public Sector Equality and Human Rights Duty, Unit 3, in the public service. Once you complete all 3 units and complete the assessments, you will get a certificate. You must pass a 15-question assessment. Throughout the module, there will be chances to check your understanding and reflect on how your organisation is meeting its public sector equality and human rights duty. At the end of each unit, you will be encouraged to complete your personal action plan. This module is an introduction only, so we would encourage you to undertake further training in equality and human rights to build on this knowledge. Staff of public bodies can access this learning at IHREC.ie. Thank you for your interest, and we hope you enjoy the module.
So let's just give you an overview of what is in it. We have developed it in a way that involves obviously the learning information, but it's interactive with case studies, scenarios that are practical application of human rights and equality in public service. We have a little promotional email and the link to access it and the information about it. I can send it to the department to distribute out. You must register, so every public body is listed and you register, and we have recently opened it up to civil society organisations. So members of your PPN can access this once they register as a civil society organisation, and I will send all the information that can be distributed out. So that's it. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to take them. And if anybody wants any further information, all of the resources that are referenced there on the PowerPoint can be accessed. We have a guide for implementing the public sector duty. We also have a tool around evidence-based assessment and an inclusive consultation approach. So they're all available from IHREC.ie, and I will send through the link to the e-learning as well.
Okay, thanks very much, Bernie, for that very comprehensive presentation on the human right public sector duty. And just to clarify, the e-learning module, that can be viewed by anybody. It's not restricted to anyone in particular.
No, it's not restricted to anyone in particular. It is obviously the nature of it, the focus of it is around human rights and equality in the public service. But from the perspective of the civil society organisations, it's good that they have an understanding of what obligations public bodies have in the context of the duties. So it's very informative for them. And I think in the development of the LECP, it will give a good context to people who maybe aren't that familiar with the duty and with the, how it actually translates to the day-to-day work in a local authority or the public body, and that would be considered within the LECP.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much again for that. Okay, so we're going to take a short break for about 7 minutes. So that'll bring us on to maybe 11:31, 11:32. So you can make that cup of coffee, make that urgent phone call or whatever you need to do, check that email, and we'll see you back here in 7 minutes time. Thank you. So the next segment of the webinar is from Creative Ireland. It's pre-recorded from Sheila Deegan from the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sports and the Media. And I think it's an opportunity for us to highlight as well the role for culture, arts, creativity, and so on as part of the LECP process. We speak quite a lot about the community and economic elements, but certainly the cultural elements as well can cut across both of these in a very, very important way. So Ali, I think you've lined up the piece for us. So just to say again, this is a pre-recorded piece from Sheila Deegan.
Great, I'll play that now.
Hello, my name is Sheila Deegan and I'm here today to tell you a bit about the Creative Ireland programme as it has existed for the last 5 years and as it will exist for the next 5 years. So from the outset, the core proposition of the Creative Ireland programme is that participation in cultural and creative activity promotes individual, community and national well-being. It's an all-of-government programme, and since its establishment, it has sought to increase opportunities for participation in culture and creativity in Ireland. Currently, the pillars are creative youth, creative communities, cultural and creative infrastructure, creative industries, and global reputation. But the reality is that the first two pillars are the most proactive at the moment. For me, creative communities is what I'm responsible for, and that is the partnership between central government and local government, all 31 local authorities. In 2020, we undertook a review of this pillar in partnership with the CCMA to understand how impactful and the current pillar is and where it might go in terms of the future. So you may know that within every local authority, there is a cross-cutting culture and creativity team that works across the local authority within and across to provide a unified voice for culture and creativity, the sector. The investment into local authorities from that pillar 2 over the last 5 years is a total of 28.2 million, 23.2 of that coming from our department, the Department of Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sport and Media, and the 1 million annual investment from the Department of Housing, Local Government and Heritage, which is the parent department, as you know, for local authorities. What has worked in the last 5 years? Well, every local authority has worked through a culture and creativity strategy that is framed by the community and around engagement with creativity, and it is delivering on creativity as a strategy for well-being, social cohesion and economic development. We are currently in the process of supporting the development of new strategies for the next 5 years of the programme 2023-2027. We feel that these strategies have helped with policy integration and shifting the recognition of the role of culture and creativity in issues that and priorities like climate action, like youth, like placemaking, things that that are important locally to a local authority. We also work in partnership with the local authorities on the National Day of Creativity for Young People, which is called Crinne na nÓg. It's just taken place on Saturday, the 11th of June, with 650 events programmed by the local authorities and ourselves working with national strategic partners. So what does all that look like over the last 5 years? To date, it looks like 6,000 initiatives, community-based initiatives across 31 local authorities, 2,600 projects for Crinne na nÓg. And just to understand the economic development piece, in 2020, we recorded that 4,800 local creative professionals were supported through funding in Creative Ireland. And you will have seen from the previous slide that Creative Communities has delivered a 50% increase in funding since it was established, testament really to the work of the culture and creativity teams in local authorities. In February, our Minister, Kathryn Mcguigan, received in principle approval from the government to create a new detailed programme for the next 5 years. That's what we're currently working on, and that will be submitted to the government for approval later this year. The 5 pillars for the next 5 years include youth and communities, as already mentioned. Creative industries will include a roadmap that is being done in partnership with the Department of Enterprise, and that recognises how local creative economies and other larger scale industries contribute to our well-being. Creative health and well-being. Obviously, health and well-being became a very topical issue during the pandemic. Essentially, Creative Ireland is a well-being programme, and therefore we're bringing that to the foreground now with this pillar. And just to say, it does have an impact at a local authority level, where we have provided targeted funding under Creativity and Older Age Scheme for the last 3 years, connecting age-friendly programmes and Healthy Ireland officers in local authorities to Creative Ireland. Similarly, with Creative Climate Action, that is a fund that was established 2 years ago with the Department of Climate and Communication and ourselves. There are 15 projects currently being rolled out, and it's about behavioural change around the climate change piece. 4 local authorities are delivering out of the 15, and the sustainability piece is not just in relation to climate. It includes EDI, SDGs, all of the things that LCDCs will be looking at in the cross-cutting priorities that you have established for yourselves. So there are, I think, within the 5 pillars, there are many opportunities for the LECPs to look at the work of the last 5 years of Creative Ireland, and also the strategic direction of travel for the next 5 years. So what will that strategic direction of travel look like? Well, we're working, as I said, to support the development of 5-year culture and creativity strategies. These are led by a director service and the nominated Creative Ireland programme coordinator within the local authority. This is the process that we are engaging with at the moment. And I know we're a little bit ahead of your process, and that your process, you know, the first 2 years is developing the framework, and that the next part is the implementation. We need to get to the place in December where we have new culture and creativity strategies, because they form the basis of the service level agreement between our department, Tourism, Culture, Arts, Gaeltacht, Sport and Media, and each individual local authority. But in implementing this process, we have been working to ask the teams in the local authorities how the new strategy is an opportunity to align the work even further, and not just an action plan of activities. So although we fund a culture-based programme on an annual basis, we're also looking for the teams to think strategically. And they have been working flexibly, and they have been working collaboratively across the local authority, but there's still an opportunity to think about the ways that this can be done further. And so you can see here, you know, not every local authority will have the capacity to include all of these people on their team. And we're not trying to create a silo within a local authority. What we're trying to do, as I said earlier, is provide the unified voice within the local authority and understand how culture and creativity and the value of it can be embedded further in the work across the local authorities. We've worked with the CCMA on this process to understand what the priorities for local authorities are in the coming years. So, for example, Town Centre First, which is an initiative of the Department of Rural and Community, is an opportunity for the culture and creativity teams to look at the work that's the priorities that will come as a result of that, and to integrate them into the strategic priorities of their new culture and creativity strategy. And resilient communities, climate change, you know, all of these will have different, they'll take a different shape at a local level. And I suppose just you can see there that it's the value and holding the value of culture and creativity at the center of any of these priorities is what we're encouraging in development of the new culture and creativity strategies. This is the vision for creative communities. It is similar to the vision of the last 5 years. So rather than change the ambition of embedding culture and creativity as a strategy for well-being, social cohesion and economic development, we kept those 3 things, and we will enable that through these 4 areas of policy, practice, participation and partnership. Partnership being the central government relationship with local authorities through the culture and creativity teams in the local authorities. The values, you know, are related to the vision, which is access and participation to culture and creativity, culture and creative activities locally. Culture as a catalyst for collaboration. And I know that the principles of the new LCDC plans is around collaboration. Integration of culture and creativity across all of the strategies. And, you know, the 6,000 plus projects, there are many examples that demonstrate this integration. Supporting the environmental, social and economic returns that help to deliver on national, local and regional agendas. And you know, many of you you will be familiar with the policy context, which is quite complex, but at the same time, networking the networks and joining the dots for people is part of the ambition of what we're trying to do as well. And we recognize that the success to date has been because of the agility and the integrated approach that the local authority culture and creativity teams have been doing, you know, driving this cross collaboration to support change and positive outcomes locally. as some targeted initiatives that we have, you know, I've mentioned the Creative Climate Action, and I've mentioned the Creativity in Older Age. Similar, CRINU is obviously it's a national day. It's embedded now. It's 5 years in. First year that we've had it in person this year after 2 years of the pandemic. But ironically, the pandemic helped young people to I suppose take notice of their creative talents, their curiosity, their interests, and to platform it on this National Day. And so, for example, we had 8 live stages across the country this year. One of the strategic partners called Garageland, which, you know, one young person said, I never thought I'd play outside of the shed or the bedroom, whereas Crinne na Nóg is the day that you can actually be, you know, make visible the creative initiative that you're interested in. And Just Reimagine was again a targeted fund. You might be familiar with it. It's the Irish Architecture Foundation collaborative working piece where they work with local communities to reimagine their place from their point of view. In the same way that Crinne na Nóg, the principle is to, you know, the voice of the child. We work with Hub na Nóg on that to make sure that the voice of the child is very much part of the programming. Similar with Reimagine, it's very much the voice of the community in that placemaking initiative, now funded not just by us, but by the Department of Housing and Local Government and the Department of Rural and Community. So just, I suppose, to give some comfort around the fact that we're not asking for these new culture and creativity strategies to be done in isolation, and we're not looking to create SWAT teams in local authorities that use culture to fix problems. We're seeking to ensure that culture and creativity is not working as a silo, and that the value it brings is clear. And we wanted to connect to all of the policies that you see there, and they're just some of the ones. And we've asked local authorities to just look at 4 to 6 areas of focus that can have the potential for the long-term impact for the local authority in this, you know, building on existing in-house expertise and strategies to offer real strategic support for culture and creativity to thrive at a local level. And we have asked the question, as we've been to visit 25 of the 31 local authorities, you know, how can your new culture and creativity strategy support the delivery of appropriate regional policies, including the new LECP plans? So just to recap, there are 5-year culture and creativity strategies in place, but there are new ones being put in place. The teams are highly innovative. That's been demonstrated through their work of the 6,000 projects. Crinne na Nóg is now embedded as a National Day of Creativity for Children and Young People, and we are the only country in the world to do so. And we do feel, we feel that the work to date has shifted the recognition among local authorities of the role that culture and creativity can play in a paced and purposeful approach to embedding creativity as an instrument for well-being, social cohesion, and economic development. So that's my brief introduction and overview of where we were and where we're going, and the opportunity that exists now as you plan within the local authority for the new LECP framework, and, you know, recognizing that your priorities around sustainability, age, disability, poverty align with some of the work that the culture and creativity team may have already considered for their new policies, and where they're complementary and where they might be a coalition of minds between people. So my name is Sheila Deegan, and these are my details, and I'd be happy to speak to anybody individually or collectively again around the work of Creative Ireland.
Okay, that was a pre-recorded piece from Sheila Deegan on Creative Ireland. So just to thank the department for that. So we're going to move on now to the final formal presentation. And this is from Kathryn Mcguigan, who's the Chief Officer with the National Age Friendly Ireland programme. So Kathryn This is, as many will know, is a shared service on behalf of all of the local authorities, hosted by Meath County Council. So over to you, Kathryn. And just to say again, you have 20 minutes and I'll call you to attention if we go beyond that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kieran. Yeah, I have my timer on, so hopefully I'll do it within the time. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, great. We can hear you, Kathryn. And just, I think you're putting the slides into slideshow mode now, are you?
Is that working?
It's not in the full screen display for us quite yet. If you're able to do the magic that you did last time.
Okay, 1 second, bear with me.
It's always a little bit of a dance just to get that.
Well, that's it. It just keeps you on your toes, doesn't it? So we'll try it now. How's that, Ali?
Yeah, and then if you just do this, if there's a way to swap the display setting under that menu there, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Give us a moment. It hasn't changed for us yet, just to say we're seeing it in presenter view right now.
Okay, sorry, 1 second. I'm going to just maybe go back to the drawing board.
Yeah. And I always have them as a backup, but it can work better. Lovely, we've done it. Perfect. Thanks a lot, Kathryn.
And thank you everybody for your patience. And look, it's lovely to see you all. I'm very conscious that a lot of the age-friendly program managers are already on this call, and some of this is speaking to the converted, because already we're working very closely with LCDCs through our age-friendly alliances and our interdepartmental teams. But this is a good opportunity just in terms of the delivery of your plans, maybe to highlight the work of the shared service in terms of that catalytic approach between policy and then all of local government. And I suppose really speak to some of the highlights that older people have prioritized for us in the context of your plans, what's important at the moment. And certainly since the pandemic, there's been some key learnings that we think it's appropriate to share with you at national level. So just 1 second. So look, just to set the context, particularly for anybody that I'm also noticing, Kieran, that over the last couple of years, we've also had a lot of redeployment and some people have come in new. So some of this has to be, we're always sort of sharing the context. When we started the age-friendly program in 2008, there were roughly 430,000 older people in Ireland. Today, that stands over 730,000 older people using 65 plus as a benchmark. By 2031, that's going to increase to over 1 million. And certainly in terms of what impact that's going to have on our children and our grandchildren, the age population for people aged 80 plus is going to quadruple. And that has policy impacts in terms of the fact that there's going to be more older people than younger people, but also in terms of public policy like housing, planning, infrastructure, economic development, healthcare, the whole lot. This is really important. It goes back to the point that Greg made. You know, we cannot continue to think in a siloed approach, and that's one of the things that Age Friendly has really fostered. And I'll talk a little bit about those key principles that we focus on. Health and well-being. If we're living longer but not necessarily healthier, that doesn't just talk about acute services and primary care services. Health and well-being needs to move in this country from a reactive to a more interventive and preventative approach, and that's exactly what the goals of Healthy Ireland for. And it's just great that that collaboration is being done, because I know there's a huge amount of initiatives that are focusing on prevention and intervention. And I suppose just to contextualize that in the context of aging, I'll talk a little bit more about the WHO, but at the very start of this process, Glenn Miller from the Canadian Urban Development Institute said, if you design for the young, you exclude the old, but if you design for the old, you include everyone. So we very much take a universal approach. And whilst we have 31 older people's councils, they are very, very diverse, representative. Older people are not an homogenous group. So once you turn 65, the needs of a 90-year-old versus the needs of a 65-year-old can be very, very polar opposites. So it's very important that we have representation across the spectrum to ensure that everything I suppose that we're proposing as a solution, and we ask all older people to civically participate in the consultation process. It's the needs of it are great for all populations, not just people who are older. I suppose we'll go into a little bit the domains of the WHO, but the WHO in 2006-2007 did a consultation worldwide with 33 cities across 31 countries, and Dundalk actually participated that in the context of Ireland. And really what they came up with was a framework as to what did it mean to be age friendly. And we started, one of the recommendations was the municipal approach, and it speaks to what Greg again referenced about the anchor organisation. Local government delivers well over 100 services across all those directorates. But as an anchor organisation and for local implementation, that's why they were critical to the success of the Age Friendly Ireland programme. And we're one of few countries across the world that have taken a municipal or sort of local authority approach. Some have went right through government ministerial departments, some have went through NGO, some have went through academia. And ours has been a standout front-runner country, so much so that they came to Ireland in 2019 and acknowledged Ireland as the first country fully affiliated in the world. So the first official country in the world to be affiliated. That meant they went through the whole stage process. They've signed up to the Dublin Declaration, of which Ireland is the custodianship of, and it means that everything that we've done in place has agreed to the principles as set out in the framework. And as a result of that, we obviously have a mandate to share that learning with other countries. So we have very much, the shared service has, I suppose, an international responsibility as well. Just in terms of our structure, and I alluded to, Age Friendly Ireland has went through a number of iterations since it started 12 years ago, but in 2017, under the Reform Act, the Public Services Reform Oversight Group have developed a number of shared services, and you'll be familiar with what they are. There's HAP and there's My Pay and the Roads Office and different ones. And Age Friendly Ireland was put forward as a shared service. Meath County Council bid for that and won that. And from 2017, we've been hosting the Age Friendly Ireland programme as a shared service embedded within local government. And I suppose, where is the governance anchored? And the governance is anchored, I suppose, in what we call our National Advisory Group. So we have 5 assistant secretaries or knowledges from those top departments, as you can see: housing, health, rural and community development. And Kieran will know that the assistant secretary in R&CD is on our National Advisory Group, transport, and also the Department of Tourism. And that's very important in the context of Sheila's presentation. We have 3 representatives from CCMA, and we also have, and it's chaired, National Advisory Group is chaired by my own Chief Executive, Jackie Maguire, a National Director from the HSE, and an Assistant Commissioner from Garda Síochána. And the economic element, which is going to be important today in the context of your LECPs, with the CEO of Chambers Ireland. At local level, we have 31 age-friendly alliances, which is chaired in the main by the Chief Executive of the local authority. We have 31 programme managers. We have 31 older people's councils. More recently, since the housing options policy that was developed in 2019, and it's a joint departmental housing policy, we have 31 age-friendly technical advisors, and they can range from architects to engineers to planners. And in 24 of the local authorities, we have interdepartmental groups who would take in, I suppose, all of those different domains that we're talking about that speak very collaboratively with the goals of the LECP. And in the shared service at national level, we operate a number of structures to make sure that we're providing that cohesion from the policy into the delivery. And we bring together the chief executives 4 times a year, the chairs of alliances. We have 6 regional programme managers who support the programme managers at local level. We have a national network of age-friendly programme managers and the housing advisors. The 31 chairs of the older people's councils come together, and because we're focused on consultation, that's really, really important. We also bring together, we've quite a generous NGO sector in Ireland working towards the needs of older people. So we bring together the CEOs of about 12 of those national organisations. And we also have a Healthy Age Friendly Homes Oversight Group, which of time, I'll speak to that because it's very much a collaboration and a partnership with Sláinte Care. So the WHO, what does it mean to be age friendly? And they developed a checklist as well as the framework. And it really speaks to all of the things that we spoke about, and Councillor from Cork really touched on this. Outdoor spaces and environment and buildings is your built environment. So everywhere you go, whether it's a town, village, a museum, an airport, should be accessible. Transportation, whether that's public transportation, how you drive your own car, public service obligations, it means that we need to have, support to where we need to get to. Housing, which has become very much a policy priority, particularly in the last couple of years. Respect and social inclusion, very much speaking to Bernie's presentation and the agenda, and making sure that that diversity is represented, so what we're responding to meets the needs of all people in our society. participation, social participation, communication and information, which has really come to the fore in COVID, and how we connect and how we make sure that everything we do is accessible. And then civic participation and employment, again, which speaks to your economic piece. And within that context, you can look at pensions, you can look at business succession, workforce retirement planning, older employees, social enterprise models, and so forth. And then the last one, obviously, community support and healthcare, which is really important. Prior to 2020, we had a number of policies, but it was anchored in the National Positive Ageing Strategy of 2013. And effectively, a lot of those actions were implemented through the Age Friendly Ireland programme. But since then, we've done, I suppose, considerable work with the departments to take a whole of government approach. And that was reflected in Programme for Government in 2020 when they put in a vision of an age-friendly Ireland, which, as you know, straddles all of them. So if you take in, for example, Housing for All, we're embedded in that in terms of the housing delivery action plans. The Town Centre first looks at proximity to services, regeneration, footfall, housing for older people within town centres, and I suppose growing our rural villages and communities. Same as the URDF. We work very closely with Sláinte Care. We're doing a partnership with Creative Ireland at the moment, as Sheila spoke to. We align with other agendas such as climate action and done some really, really good projects around biodiversity right up to energy retrofits. And I know somebody mentioned the Just Transitions programme earlier, which is a fabulous opportunity for older workers to be redeployed, whether it's in a voluntary capacity or in a paid capacity at local level, all speaking to, I suppose, the regeneration of areas. Maybe post like the likes of Bord na Móna coming out of business and that. So it's a very, very good policy. Just to sort of highlight some of our critical success factors and key principles, we have, I suppose we spoke to the partnership approach, and our alliances are made of multi-sectoral organisations, but we have the local authority hosting, the political support at local level, also our Dublin Declaration, but linking in with all structures and plans at local level, like LCDCs, SPCs, PPNs, JPCs. It's really important, and I know most of the programme managers embed that in the approach, and likewise it's in our corporate plans as well. And if you look at the right people, making sure that we're bringing in all of our sectors, whether it's business, whether it's community, whether it's academia, it's really, really important that everybody is working towards that common vision. I suppose what we tried to do with older people when we started was to bring in their voice, and the ethos was that they would come in and tell us what the barriers were, but try and co-design the solutions. So we've delivered about 13,000 initiatives over the last 12 years. Many of them have been mainstreamed, and they have all come from the input and the design of older people. We've consulted with over 30,000 older people, and a lot of that includes intergenerational approaches, actually speaking to younger people with older people and looking at responses to that. And I suppose the key thing is collaboration. And again, going back to that point, it's not up to one agency just to deliver, HSE for healthcare, local government for housing. It's a whole approach. In terms of national initiatives, to date we've done, and these are the things you can look at in the context of your LECPs, we've done 55 age-friendly town processes at varying different levels. Really good example of Ennis recently, where they've used capital funding and current funding to deliver age-friendly objectives, and that's physical outputs as well as maybe more social supports and community supports. We've about 2,500 age-friendly businesses, and we've a dedicated principal advisor in that in the shared service. We've about 150 age-friendly libraries. We have our first age-friendly hospital in Kilkenny. We have hundreds of age-friendly housing developments, and we've actually showcased about 54 who are looking at right-sizing models, energy efficiency, encouraging older people to right-size so we can move away from this traditional model of residential care when we're going from our house, that we can actually have a continuum of care and housing options to look at, which is everything that the housing policy was focused on. We've done 2 age-friendly primary care centres. We launched our first age-friendly stadium in Croke Park recently with the WHO, hundreds of age-friendly parking spaces, age-friendly seating, public realm, tone zones, lots and lots of work like that has happened at municipal level. And on Friday, we just launched our first 2 age-friendly airports in the world. So Knock and Shannon have done extensive work, and we're just about to launch our first age-friendly tourist destination down in Wicklow, and I suppose it will continue. What we ask our alliances to do at local level, which are when those multi-sectoral groups chaired by the chief, is that they then identify through their older people's councils what stadia, what hospital, where the parking is through the walkability audits, what they would like to do next effectively, and how we scale those up. One key thing that came up was a piece of work we did with health and wellbeing in the HSE. They gave us some funding, I suppose, to map all the outputs through those 6 thematic areas that were funded, some from your own department, Kieran, a lot through Greg and Healthy Ireland. And there was a number of different funding streams. And under all those 6 thematic areas, we consulted with older people and the practitioners to say what worked, so that we can look at sustaining. And this is really important in the context of the LECP. If something has worked, let's roll it out again, but let's look for, you know, a direct funding stream to make sure it can be sustained. We built an online repository, and I'll go through the resources very quickly at the end, but we have that legacy document which showcase what older people said had the most impactful. We have a lovely video capturing that as well. We have the online repository, and we launched the publication in February in Farmley. So there's just a few examples for you to consider within your LECPs and linking with your alliances. Staying active, communications, the things like local radio, chatters and matters programs that rolled out in the Midlands, where they got older people to come in and talk about different services that were there. A beautiful project, but lots and lots of, I suppose, different projects came in under Staying Active around physical activity and so forth. A lot of those rolled out, and they were really, really, I suppose, supportive to older people. Staying connected, household maintenance projects, you know, your cares and repairs, and there's a good opportunity for social enterprise models to be developed at local level, where you can combine the dividend of volunteering or community employment schemes with an output for older people that has multiple dividends for families and everything else. And they're really, really good. And we do have, Greg had alluded to the mapping exercise. We're working with Health Intelligence to map, I suppose, all these different services through our Healthy Age Friendly Homes programme. And it's really great where you can see a gap analysis, where you can see gaps in services and where those opportunities to develop a local response can be provided. And again, I can share this afterwards, Kieran, we can share the presentation, but I would recommend everybody read the document. They go into some things: eating well, being creative, and minding your mood, and all of the great work that was rolled out through the pandemic. What have we learned from those? What are important, and what needs to be scaled up and sustained to be able to respond to our ageing population? I just wanted to reference very briefly the Healthy Age Friendly Homes programme that we're doing with Sláinte Care. It's in 9 local authority sites, and it's a person-centric approach to assessing an older person's need to gateway them away from repeated admissions to hospital and prevention of admission to residential care. We've just finished our first interim report, and it's highly on target. We have delivered on our forecasted outcomes. To date, we've produced data on 800 people. It's now up to about 1,300 older people who have been visited. But we have actually shown case studies where we have actually prevented older people from going into residential care by the response of the appropriate healthcare services, by the right housing, by the right technology supports, and by the right social supports. And really and truly, it's a coordination role. But because it is anchored in local government funded by Sláinte Care, that's where the unique selling point has come in. That is because the positioning of that coordination role. So that's just to give you a flavour of the cooperation and I suppose how we can provide a response to real challenges that are being presented for our LECPs. We would gather data at the end of the year, so that's just to give you a flavour of some of the things. So if you're doing anything in the LECP that's age friendly, we'd be delighted to combine that and sort of say, look at the kind of things, the provision of digital training, how many business recognition programs, how many walkability audits, you know, how many intergenerational activities, physical activities. It's important to be able to collect that data. So if we're going back to government and saying these have worked, therefore, particularly DRCD can say, well, that's where funding should be geared towards if they are providing huge dividends for the broader society. I'm conscious of only 2 minutes left, I think, Kieran, so I'm going to focus really on a few resources. Just to let you know that the National Age Friendly Recognition Awards are being hosted in Clare County Council, first award since 2019, so we're hugely excited. We would ask each department to come in and present the award under each of the 8 domains, and so it's a nice affair. It'll be in Dromoland Castle. The submissions are open and the judging panel is based in Clare, and they do a tour of the country then to look at the short list of projects and pick the overall winner. So just to let you know that if you are in that space, it's really important to try and get your submissions in, your applications in before the end of June. It's a fantastic opportunity to showcase your work. We do a weekly newsletter. In the pandemic, we did it every day. If you're not already aware of it, it's a good way to see about the level of activity and maybe inspire you in terms of thinking, God, that would be something that we could tie into our LECP or something from an economic perspective. We have YouTube channels, we use social media, but this newsletter is circulated, and most of you are probably aware of it because it goes to your program manager and is circulated to all staff, PPNs, OPCs and elected representatives. But just if you're not aware of it, please do get in touch and we can sign you up for the newsletter. We have the Age Friendly Ireland website where all national projects are captured, but most importantly, local projects, and the contact details for your Age Friendly Programme Manager, technical advisor, and some of the activities that are happening at local level, like local strategies and annual reports that have been implemented. So a really good resource if you're not familiar with the level of activity that's going on. We also have a partnership with the Department of Housing, Health and the Housing Agency in terms of a technical resource hub. It's the Age Friendly Homes. So as part of the housing policy, and my colleague Barry Lynch, Director of Housing, in Meath County Council, chaired one of the subgroups. A huge amount of actions have rolled out, and we have produced technical guidance and planning sort of guidance, and I suppose resources that will inform what's happening from the housing and planning perspective. It's important just to be aware of that in the context of your LECP, and it's a very, very good resource.
Okay, Kathryn, your 20 minutes is up.
That's grand. I just reminded myself. That's fine. Second last slide, Kieran. So nearly bang on time. So thank you. Look at Kieran. Okay. Thank you and Ali for giving me the opportunity to present today, and anybody can get in touch with the shared service afterwards.
Okay, thanks very much, Kathryn, and sorry for cutting you short there,
but we're kind of
tight for time. Okay, so look, just on the schedule then, there's just 3 more items, I suppose, to work through. So what we have provided for is just an opportunity for some networking among yourselves. We are going to shorten it a little bit to maybe 12 minutes, if that's okay with everybody, or maybe just till about 20 past. So Ali's just going to present 2 questions that we want you to consider, and then there'll be an opportunity for you to individually feedback on the 2 questions. So an opportunity for us to discuss them with a number of other people on the webinar, and then an opportunity for you to individually feedback on that. So Ali, over to you on this. Okay, thanks very much for that, Ali, and thanks to everybody for their participation in that part of the webinar. So we're at a stage where there's some time for final questions that anyone might have. We have one on the chat function in relation to the distinction between the 6-year LECP framework and the first 2-year implementation plan. I suppose rather than getting into a lengthy discussion on that, I suppose in the first instance that is set out in the guidance document that was issued last November, and our impressions would be that the framework should be a relatively high level framework, with then an opportunity to develop quite specific actions that could be implemented over the next 2 years. You know, actions that you feel are within the capability of the resources and the personnel that you have, and that is possible also maybe to set some targets around. What didn't work so well the last time in terms of the 6-year plans is that it was difficult to set clear targets and implementation timeframes for actions when there was a 6-year timeframe. So we feel that the 2-year timeframe allows actions to be quite specific that can be delivered within the overall framework. And at the end of the 2 years, there will be an opportunity to revise the framework again, and then to reset a new set of actions. So that's just putting it in summary, but the design of that will be very much up to your own preference in terms of how you want to present that in the LECP to be adopted finally. So is there anybody else just wants to raise any other questions before we wrap up? We are available obviously at any time that people want to query things. We will be in touch with the LCDCs over the coming week or so, just to catch up with you in terms of where you're at in terms of progress. Okay, so we have a question there, feedback, which just to say Ali does compile it for us, and we do get to keep that as well, and to reflect on it and to see if there's anything we need to focus on going forward. So just to finish up then, a big thank you to Ali for her hosting of not just this webinar, but the previous ones as well, which has been really great. And I really like that Menti tool as a feedback, and in events like this, which can't compensate for an in-person event, but certainly gives people an opportunity to give their own personal feedback. So thanks, Ali, for that. A big thank you also to each of the presenters today. And I think it's an opportunity as well for enhanced engagement between different policy stakeholders and all of the LCDCs and their stakeholders, because ultimately it's at the local level. This is where the the national policy frameworks and initiatives have to intersect with local implementation arrangements. So it's really important that dialogue takes place and that there's an understanding of the policy direction and also an understanding of how that can be translated at local level. And then finally, a big thank you to my own team here, to Lisa, Annette, Anne, Kathy and Tina, just for their work in terms of the planning for these events. And just to reiterate again, we will be in touch with the LCDCs over the coming weeks, just to catch up with you all. And certainly we're available for any queries or questions that you have. Okay, so slán go raibh go léir agus go raibh maith agaibh.